The One Piece manga finally gave us a glimpse at the absolutely unbelievable powers of the mysterious rulers of the world government, finally ending all speculation whether Imu and the Gorosei can actually fight. They absolutely can. Plus, we learn a ton of absolutely mind-blowing information about Imu's true past and confirmation of their connections with the mysterious Queen Lily, who was introduced in the last chapter. But what might be even more game-changing is that not one, but two other individuals than Cobra saw the secret ruler and then barely managed to escape, which means that very soon we could see the world government's darkest secret revealed to the entire world. And on top of all that, it was also confirmed that Vivi's family are actually part of the legendary D clan, which means that we could finally be learning the secrets about the famous D initial once Vivi finally reunites with Luffy on Egghead Island. And all of this could lead Vivi on a path of revenge for her father's death, but overthrowing the world government and its ruler looks like it just became a whole lot more difficult. Because this is the very first time that we've ever seen any of the rulers of the world government use any of their powers, and you cannot even imagine how unbelievably incredible these abilities seem to be. Now, everyone is of course asking one question: what exactly are these powers? Well, in this chapter we do see Imu transform into some sort of giant shadowy monster with an enormous mouth and sharp fangs, and he can apparently even eat fire and might possibly have the ability to create something like shadow arrows. But to push this chapter into even higher levels of insane hype, the 5 elders even transform into giant creatures while they try to prevent Sabo and the King of Alabasta from leaving the throne room. And so with all of this crazy new information, let's run through some possibilities for what these powers may actually be. Now, the obvious answer here for Imu's abilities is of course some sort of super powerful devil fruit that lets the user create some sort of dark monstrosity. However, we already have seen a shadow fruit in the story, and this is definitely different from those powers. It also cannot be the darkness fruit, since Blackbeard ate that fruit as well, so we're left with a few options here. It could of course be some sort of legendary devil fruit that allows Imu to either transform into or create this enormous shadowy creature. And while I'm not totally convinced of this one, another possibility could be a mythical moon god fruit as direct opposition to Luffy's sun god fruit. And there's even Japanese mythology to support this idea, since in Japanese the moon god is called Tsukuyomi and is actually the cast-off husband of the sun god. So already there are some comparisons here, but let's take it one step further, because in Japanese mythology, Tsukuyomi is said to strongly believe in order and will enforce it whenever he can, even going as far as to kill in order to maintain order. That sounds pretty much like the Great Cleansing that we had heard mentioned back in chapter 908. But of course, that is just one possibility. Another could be that these powers are from some other previously unknown devil fruit ability, and we're basically just seeing a silhouette here. But that's just the tip of the iceberg, because what has me super excited about Imu's powers is the fact that they could possess a power that we have never seen before in One Piece. And for that, let's take this back to devil fruits and establish a few things here, because first, it has been explained that devil fruit powers come from an actual devil inside that fruit. So in a way, there does seem to be some sort of mysterious creature, or at least technological magical energy source inside. Second, we do know that these devils are actual things that exist outside of a particular fruit, because once a user dies, the devil does travel and is reborn inside another fruit close by. And all of this makes me wonder if there is an actual devil or many devils that don't need to exist inside a fruit. Like, seriously, why do they need some sort of host in order for their powers to work? Do you get what I'm saying here? If not, let me just lay out simply for you. What if Imu's real power is to control or summon actual devils that can somehow use their own special abilities, just like devil fruit users? And so maybe this creature that we're seeing in this chapter might not even be really Imu, but is a devil that Imu can summon at will. Now, this is certainly a very wild idea, give you that, but one that I think is possible in my opinion and could allow Imu to use all kinds of crazy powers. And you might be thinking, oh, hold on, Ohara, Dr. Vegapunk told us that devil fruits represent the desires of someone to have a certain power, but keep in mind that this is just an in-world theory, and that doesn't mean that these devils can't be the product of those original desires. And I mean, who knows? Emu and the Gorosei might even be the original devils, or have awakened the devil itself inside of their devil fruits. Also, it would make complete sense to me that Emu has a power that surpasses all of our imaginations, similar to how basically no one expected the actual powers of Luffy's Gear 5 transformation. So maybe this is some way to counter devil fruits, and it has been a secret ability all along that is kind of separate from devil fruits or opposed to it. But whatever the true answer might be here, there can no longer be any doubt at all that Emu is a real threat, and not just like a random dude who can operate behind the scenes. And the same can of course now also be said for the Gorosei, who have these wild beast-looking like transformations, which we unfortunately don't get to see outside of their silhouettes as well. However, their shapes do hint that they look like ancient or mythical creatures, so wouldn't be too surprised at all if they each have mythical zone devil fruits themselves. No matter what the answer to this riddle is, they are clearly real monsters in their own right, which makes me extremely excited for when we return to Egghead Island and see 𝙻𝚎𝚐𝚗𝚡 join the battle against Luffy, because this chapter basically confirmed that the Gorosei are also not some washed up scrubs, but that they can actually use some insanely overpowered abilities in battle as well. And speaking of said battle on Egghead Island, we could be in for a very big surprise when we reach the climax of that arc very soon. And that's because if 𝙻𝚎𝚐𝚗 is actually an extremely powerful ability user, as is clearly suggested here, then we could be headed for a surprising turn of events for the Straw Hats. Because remember that Law and Kid were both soundly defeated in this very same arc. So while we all easily expect Luffy to come out on top here, actually kind of possible that Luffy could suffer a similar defeat here. I mean, we've discussed this in previous chapter reviews, but Egghead Island has a ton of striking parallels to the 𝙬𝚎𝚐𝚐 archipelago arc. Like, most importantly, the crew is riding a super high wave of confidence, having just come from Wano and defeating an Emperor of the Sea. So knowing Oda, this could be the perfect time to snatch away all of our expectations and deliver another crushing blow, just like when the Straw Hats were separated at the end of 𝙬𝚎𝚐𝚐, which they also entered with a lot of confidence after Thriller Bark. Because if there is one thing that Luffy always struggles with, it is a new surprising power that he just can punch into the ground. Which does sound exactly like what we could be getting from 𝙻𝚎𝚐𝚗 whenever he arrives at Egghead Island. But taking this back, let's swing all the way back to Emu, because there are actually a few more mind-blowing reveals that were shown in this chapter. So in the last chapter, the Gorosei actually named Emu in front of King Cobra, and then here it appears that Cobra is actually very familiar with the name Emu, and Cobra himself basically confirms that Emu was the name of one of the original 20 kings, but Emu furiously cuts him off before he can say anything else. And so this seems to confirm a very common theory that Emu is actually from the Void Century, and while it is possible that Emu himself could just be a descendant or reincarnation of the original Emu, the information we get next makes that very unlikely. And that's because Emu then goes on to talk about Nefertari Lily as if they had actually known the former Queen of Alabasta personally. But we do not stop there, because the mind-blowing reveals just keep on coming. I mean, these recent chapters, this arc in general, has me sweating every time I make one of these reviews. Okay, so next, Emu claims that the D's were our enemies in the past, which I do assume means the 20 kingdoms. And even further, they explain that basically all of the world government's problems today, such as pirates trying to find the poneglyphs and scholars researching the Void Century, all of that can basically be traced back to a single event that was all Lily's fault back during the end of the Void Century. Okay, I mean, this is literally incredible. Finally, we're starting to get answers and more information about the Void Century, and it just feels amazing. I mean, I hope you can relate to that. Now, let's take a moment to wrap our heads around all of this, because based on what Emu says here, it seems there was some plot to completely wipe out the ancient kingdom that was almost completely successful. However, Lily spoiled the plan somehow, maybe by failing in a certain task, or much more likely, leaking some secret information. I mean, they almost make it sound like the creation of the poneglyphs themselves go back to Lily. Now, why would she do this? Well, maybe because she was AD as well and actually secretly allied with the ancient kingdom, or maybe she was just friends with Joy Boy. But whatever the real reason, her action allowed for the poneglyphs to spread, which gave hope to the future generations, as we are seeing in the current storyline. And Cobra even starts to recite this secret letter that was left behind by Lily, which says to protect the poneglyphs and to raise the flag of dawn to the world. So clearly, Lily, for some reason, decided to go against the other 19 kingdoms and leave a trail for future generations to follow. All of this clearly angers Emu in this chapter, which then, as we all knew was gonna happen, eventually leads to Cobra sacrificing himself so that 𝙬𝚎 can escape. And now, what's even more incredible is that this is not all that we see in this epic turn of events, because just as important are the people that Emu wasn't able to kill in the throne room. And yes, that is people, meaning plural, more than one, because 𝙬𝚎 was able to escape because of Cobra's sacrifice and his insanely strong devil fruit. Now, this guy was also eavesdropping on the conversation, and when Emu finally notices Walpole here, the former ruler of Drum Island, who we all really don't like, at least so far, literally munches his way through the walls of the castle and is somehow able to actually escape. Which, hold on, is actually very curious to me. Like, does that mean that Emu let Walpole escape, or maybe Emu didn't want to make a bigger scene than this already is? Because clearly they have incredibly dangerous powers, and probably any of them in that room could have chased down Walpole somehow, unless he got help from someone else. Now, regardless, both Walpole and 𝙬𝚎 have escaped with the knowledge that the world government has been hiding even more secrets than the world has ever dreamed. And at this point, there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that the world will soon be learning about Emu. Although it is odd that the world government has not been going ballistic here trying to keep this info quiet, since it has already been over a month, remember, since these events took place. So maybe they don't really care that much, which is actually even more scary to think about. Anyways, 𝙬𝚎 is currently speaking with the leaders of the Revolutionary Army, and I cannot see any other reason why they would keep this a secret. This knowledge is just what they would need to bring more countries and people to their side as they try to overthrow the world nobles. But even if for some big reason Dragon decides to not reveal this secret, then surely Walpole will spill the beans to this big bird, who is also head of the newspaper that are delivered all over the world. And we've already seen that Morgans refuses to let the world government censor his news, so unless he ends up dead, then he would have every reason in the world to share the biggest news that he has ever shared in the story before. And as we've just discussed with the revolutionaries, this would surely change the world fundamentally. I mean, the whole point of the empty throne is that the rulers of the world government collectively rule the world, and I don't think all of these rulers would be like super happy once they find out that they've been secretly ruled by a supreme overlord. However, none of that might really matter, since the strongest powers in the world are basically already in play. Those are, of course, the Marines, the revolutionaries, the good pirates like the Straw Hats, and the not quite so good pirates like Blackbeard. So really, what does it even matter if these rulers throw a fit? Because really, they can't do that much anyway, as we just saw with this kingdom, which was completely wiped off the map, no chance to defend themselves at all. Now, what is even more insane though, is that with the way things are shaping up, it is entirely possible that all of these forces that I just mentioned could actually team up to take down Emu and the Celestial Dragons. I mean, just think about it. more and more and more, Emu is being set up here as the final villain, and with the Holy Knights of God just being introduced 2 chapters ago, there is a strong possibility that Emu and the Gorosei and the Holy Knights will be the final villains of the story with their own super strong force, including, by the way, the Seraphim, and it will take the combined efforts of Luffy, Blackbeard, and the Fleet Admiral Akainu to keep the world from being cleansed. It does seem kind of out there, admittedly, but you know, Luffy the sun, Blackbeard the moon, that's exactly what happened with Naruto and Sasuke in that anime. And also, Akainu has often shown that he really does not like the Celestial Dragons. I mean, personally, this twist would be super interesting to me because it would even subvert many of the expectations that we've all had about the final stages of One Piece. And you know what else this final alliance could all have in common? D. Because as we get closer to the end of the story, this mysterious initial D that has been around since the very start of the story is starting to seem like the final big clue and key that will unveil every remaining secret. And once again, we got even more confirmation that the D's were the original enemies of the 20 Kings. And in this chapter, we learned that Vivi's family are actually part of that D tribe as well, so it's not just pirates who have this initial like Luffy, Blackbeard, and even Roger, nor is it just Marines or revolutionaries like Garp and Dragon. No, this legendary clan of D's also included rulers of entire countries. So we have to ask the question that naturally arises from this reveal. Who exactly were the D clan? What does it mean? And who else is secretly part of this family? Because you can be sure that there's people out there who we haven't known about yet that they also have that initial. Look, Gojo, it's the D. It's the D initial. Look. Is that the secret to the D's? Oh yeah, that is the secret to the D family. Wait, what were your opinions on this? Okay, I agree. Now, before this chapter, part of me had wondered if the original 20 Kingdoms were all part of the D's, but that does clearly not seem to be the case now. It does much more seem like the Nefertari family were the only D's of the original 20 Kingdoms, since they were the only ones to actually stay behind when the other rulers went to Marijoa. And if that is true, then they must have had some sort of alliance with the Ancient Kingdom, as we've already discussed in previous chapter reviews. Now, whatever the case, we would be getting the answers to these secrets very soon, because Cobra's last words to Sabo were for him to tell Vivi and Luffy that his family were all part of the D's. And we don't actually know if Sabo was able to talk to Vivi after escaping. I mean, Wapol appears to have been listening, and so he could just have been able to pass Cobra's message on to his daughter already. And since Vivi is, yes, very close to Egghead Island apparently right now, she could be meeting up with Luffy on the scientific island very soon. But what you may not realize here is that this would also bring Vivi to the one person who may actually have answers to all those questions about the D clan. And of course, that would be Robin, who has already shown interest in the D clan 3 times in the past. In chapter 180, she asked Luffy about his family initials, but he had no idea what they meant. And then in chapter 301, this old Sky Knight spoke with the Straw Hats about Luffy leaving the same impression that Roger did when they visited the islands. The 3rd time, and the closest she was to learning answers, was in Shaki's bar on Sabaody, when the whole crew listened intently as Rayleigh told them about his journey with Roger to Laugh Tale. And Roger's former vice captain basically implied that he knew the truth of what the D meant, but Robin then declined his offer to explain it all to the Straw Hats right then and there. But all of this was before the time skip, and a lot has happened since then. First, she spent 2 years with the revolutionaries, and in particular with Dragon, who is one of the likeliest people in the entire world to know about the truth about the D clan. And on top of that, she has read many of the most important poneglyphs in the world during the recent arcs. And while we already knew that, you may not have ever realized that Robin actually never shares what the poneglyphs actually say. I mean, we assume that they are about the Void Century or about directions to Laugh Tale, but surely at some point she will need to reveal the actual words that are written on the poneglyphs. I mean, this has to happen, right? And the perfect time for this would of course be when the Straw Hats then meet up with Vivi Vivi, and the Alabaster Princess then asks about her newfound family, Initial, and while it might seem ridiculous that Robin has never shared any of this info with the crew, it's not really something that Luffy cares about, so he probably would have never even asked her to begin with. But it is certainly something that we care about, so I can't wait for the question to finally be answered soon, hopefully. And even if Robin cannot answer any of these questions, there are a few other characters who might easily be able to help. Of course, there is Dr. Vegapunk, who has read the entire library and research from the island of Ohara, so he's a good candidate as anyone to know the truth. Or certainly it's even possible that Saint Saturn could reveal some answers during or after the inevitable conflict on Egghead Island. And now that the Gorosei might have finally revealed their devil fruit powers, we have to ask ourselves how high they will end up ranking in all the devil fruits in One Piece. And if you want to see the top 5 most overpowered fruits in the story right now, in my opinion, well, you can watch that video right here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.